The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bitten by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André Mayette, your host. Big thanks to Luca the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in to another fun-filled episode. Today's guest is Brandon Mitchell of Birch Bark Comics. Birch Bark Comics. I don't know what I just said there. Birch Bark Comics. Birch Bark Comics. Who does many works on indigenous books here in Canada, and some amazing work. Very cool guy. We had a great conversation, and you're going to hear that very soon. As far as things going on in the world of André, well, the usual is kind of going down the pipeline. We have some cat drama, normal cat drama in the house, where the new cat, Ripley, is taken to sleeping on top of my computer tower, which is a big no-no. As you know, it's an expensive computer. It does a lot of things. You need it to work. So I now have the Hammer of Thor sitting on top of the tower to stop her from using it as a perch. Seems to have done the trick so far. I'm dreading the day she figures out how to knock it off the computer and probably breaks it. But for now, Thor or Mjolnir is sitting on top of my computer, which is very cool. And fun to see. Hopefully it'll do the trick for now. The previous cat, the current also, but cat Sheba used to do that as well. But she knew she shouldn't. I don't think Ripley quite knows yet. But hopefully this will deter her from doing that anymore. Things are moving in the creative side of things. I've been plugging away with my new artistic tablet, working on a new comic that I'm hoping to get out sometime soon. It's, soon, pejorative sense, at least, just to get a script written and get something out there. It's been far too long, and I say this a lot on these shows, and I really got to start putting pencil to paper. I'm hoping creatively and professionally I'll have some more time coming up to be able to do more of that stuff, and I'm very excited about that. So that should allow me to spread my wings a little bit when it comes back to the creative side of doing stuff, and maybe get away from just the purely commercial art, which I do enjoy doing. But, I do miss the creative art side of things as well. So I'm hoping to bring that back as well. Production continues on the play I'm in, and co-directing Happy Birthday 1 to June, the Kurt Vonnegut play. Very much enjoying that. Very rewarding creatively to be able to see that come together. I'm a big fan of Kurt Vonnegut's work, and his sort of sardonic nature is one that I often share. I think he was an amazing writer, and I'm sorry it took me so long to get to his output when it comes to reading. But I'm super happy that I'm able to take his work and bring it to the stage, especially in Truro, bringing something really different to the audience. So I'm very excited for that. Yeah, well, I guess, these intros, I'm always never sure what to say exactly. You want to give the audience, you, the listener, some insight into my life and what's going on. I enjoy doing that. It's just sometimes you kind of hit a wall where you're like, what do they need to know? What should they know? What does anybody really need to know about my life? I guess just little bits of insight are all you really need. If anything big comes up, I guess I'll report that, bring it to you. It's not like I'm some kind of a big celebrity or anything. I'm just a normal guy. I don't have a ton to report in my day-to-day normal life. But if something comes up, I'll let you know. I know creatively things are going on, and that's something I'll be happy to update you with as that progresses. I'm going to be checking out the Halifax Film Festival, which is this weekend. I'm very excited about that. Something I used to do a lot when I was younger, get in there and see as many movies as possible. Famously, I had a day where I saw 6 movies at different theaters in Halifax, and that was very fun. Tiring, but fun. And I want to get to do not quite as many, I think 3 or 4 a day, but I'm very excited for that too. It's great to experience culture, see all these movies that you might not get to see readily available right here in my neck of the woods. And I've always been a huge fan of film festivals, so I'm glad to take part in them whenever I can. very excited about this particular one as well. Going to spend the day with a friend who's a movie guy as well. Craig, if you're listening, big shout out. But if you are listening, everybody else, you're probably here for my interview with Brandon Mitchell. Super cool guy, must say. We had a great conversation. Fellow nerd, fellow traveler of the nerdy circles, and a very interesting guy with a cool story and a super positive attitude. And I don't know why we need to wait any longer for you to listen to that interview. So without much further ado, here is my talk with creator of Birch Bark Comics, Brandon Mitchell.
There we go. Good old Zoom. Hello. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Excellent. Good old Zoom.
Yeah.
You gotta like remind it where you want it to speak from.
Oh right, yeah. You have different setups. It's always a little annoying.
Yeah. Sorry for the delay. I'm helping out my brother with with childcare.
Oh, no worries at all. I actually was like, is he in that part of New Brunswick that's near the border that the time is different? Then I couldn't remember if you were or not. So I kind of assumed it might have been my fault. So
I was like, oh look, I got it. And then in my settings or like in my browser, I was like, oh, I've been getting like these spam on my inbox.
Mm-hmm.
So I see when I'm like, it's probably another one of those like notifications. I was like, I don't need to look at it. And I'm like, oh shoot.
Hey, look at it. I love your shirt, by the way. That's fantastic.
Thanks,
man.
I love your setup.
Oh, thanks. You too. That just came out on 4K, and I'm struggling. I'm kind of trying to suppress the urge to buy it again because I already have the Blu-ray set that has all the Batman animated series stuff on, including the movie. But it's tempting.
Just treat yourself.
Yeah. Well, I do way too much of that as it is.
But what's another $20?
Yeah,
what's another $20?
Good point. Yeah, you should stay away from me because I don't need more enablers in my life.
Yeah, I don't think my wife will let us hang out.
Yeah, I don't know. Mine would be cool with that either. We'll see. Just
philosophy's been this: is it better to ask for forgiveness than beg for permission?
Well, I guess that depends. I feel like every relationship's a little different.
Yeah.
In my situation, probably not. But hey, no worries at all. Cool, man. Well, good having you on the show. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I know. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Where are you located at?
So I'm from Listuguj, Quebec. So I can understand, like, it is that weird crossing. But I live in Fredericton.
Oh, okay. So you're more central.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
and you were born in I'm going to butcher the names, but I'm going to try to pronounce it. Listuguj?
Listuguj. No,
Listuguj.
But I was born in Hamilton. I was born in New Brunswick, so Hamilton. Okay. So Listuguj is in Quebec.
Yep.
It's a border town, so we do a lot of our business because Hamilton's right there. We have a lot of agreements, and we do a lot of our business there. So yeah. Cool.
So what was it growing up in Hamilton like?
I grew up in Listuguj.
Okay. Born in Hamilton, grew up in Listuguj. Got it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those weird. I mean, it was for me. I never really paid a lot of attention to it. Like, it was just like, as I grew up, I was like, oh my god, there's a social divide here. But I never.
How long did it take you before you realized that between the?
Oh, geez, I think I was like last year. No, it was one of those weird things. Like a lot of my I had friends on the res, and then I had friends in school, and for some reason, they were like everyone was in silos, and I could never put my finger on it until like it was like high school. I was just like, what's going on? Like, it was like middle school, high school. That's when I realized it was like really siloed. Yeah.
What was that system like growing in the school system to go through? Was it sort of, did it filter down to the kids as well, or was it just something that the adults that seemed to influence the adults, but did the kids sort of adhere to that sort of
it was more the adults, because like a lot of it was the kid, we all just we all had our cliques, but we all still with the sports ones, but it was all still intermingled. And I found it so weird. It was such a weird thing that happened because we never paid attention to it. And I found like it was in my 20s where people were like more into segregating, and I was just like, why? Like it was pretty, like the 90s were freaking awesome.
Yeah. Was a pretty good time, I must say. No, interesting. Well, it's funny because I didn't realize, like, you know, when you mentioned about the segregation sort of in your area, I kind of assumed it was mostly the French and English thing, but that, you know, when it's the res non-res situation, that's a whole other ball game. So there's a lot of things that work in the Quebec, New Brunswick part of the world that seems to keep people separated, which is kind of sad. I mean, I know the larger issue between French English Quebec thing, but the you know, the reservation thing is also a whole other can of worms. So seems like there's a lot of divides being built, especially in that area of Canada.
Yeah, but you know, like I said, I think it's only recent, like I would say in the last 15 or I'd say from 2000 to like 2015ish or whatever, like it was still like pretty segregated. Like it was just like these walls came up, and I was just like, I don't remember growing up like this, and I don't know why you guys are acting this way now. Like it's just one of those weird things.
What do you think the core of it is? Is it just judgment on decision on placement on where you live, on the communities you surround yourself with, or what do you think is like? Well, I guess what would each side's opinion be of the other, and why would it be something that they would find as a divide?
You know what? I think a lot of it, and this is just me, I just think a lot of it was it all boils down to like funding, I guess. Like, you know, like where, you know, and then that's how I guess that's not my new way of thinking, but that's what I've observed. Like, you know, especially when you get older and it's all about decision making, and then you find out like, oh yeah, we only did business with Hamilton because they gave us a better deal on stuff or whatever that they like.
Yeah,
they were able to get money from us for their programming, right? So it was just one of those weird things, and I was like, oh, okay, so this wasn't authentic. This was all just, you know, like a cash grab.
Yeah.
Then when you see like and I think a lot of it had to do with afterwards was like, you know, like for better or worse, we had our own school, but we didn't have our own, like from K to 8. And so kids that used to go, like my generation, we didn't have a school on reserve, so we went to school in town, and that's where we formed our friendships or whatever with the youth, like with the kids our own age.
Yeah,
you get rid of that socialization, or you get rid of that opportunity, or that, for, like I said, for better or worse, that option, then that's where you're creating your own silo. Yes, it's great that we have our own education system. Yes, it's good that it's all on reserve, but you're missing out on a larger spectrum of like meeting people and like understanding different ways of knowing and whatnot, right? So
yeah, that I feel like that's a broader discussion that's interesting in my opinion, because it's like I grew up in here, you know, I'm in Nova Scotia. I live in Truro, but I'm from a little community outside of Antigonish, which is called Afton. So the Pactanac Reserve is there, and I just grew up down the road from there. So I went to school with many people, you know, from the community. But it's like, it makes you wonder about, like, I get the desire and the need to want to like honor your own traditions and celebrate those and teach those in your own way, but also I wonder if there's some kind of happy medium in which you can open them up to broader experiences while also keeping that in place. And I feel like there are programs in school that do that in public schools, but I just don't know how well they're maintained or how broad they are.
Yeah, and I think everyone goes into these things with good intentions, but it's just still one of those things, like something's going, like I think the youth are missing out. Like there's still a social component it's a missed opportunity to build relationships, right? Sure. You can't build relationships. This is how you build relationships, like by, as a youth, as kids, right? This is how you build your networks. This is how you form connections with people, right? But if you silo yourself, then you're already making your world smaller.
Yeah, and also just like I feel like for the good of the world, you know, getting to know people of different cultures and different, you know, everything else. That's like, I think it was Anthony Bourdain or somebody like that said the biggest the enemy of racism is travel. Like the cure for racism is travel. Like getting to see other cultures, know other people. That's how you realize that we're all just people, regardless of whatever the skin of it is. The rest of it beneath it is, they're nobody's scary. They're just other people. So and making it more accessible so that we can all do that, I feel like and especially in today's world, it seems like things are getting very Canada's a different can of worms, and I feel like Canada's better. Better is a pejorative term, but than our friends down south, because it seems like a lot of things are happening there to try to divide more than ever, and I don't think it's going to work out very well for them.
Yeah, it's not like it's just one of those things. Like they don't see. It's one of those, you don't see the forest for the trees, right? So it's just like, I don't know. Yeah. I agree with you there. Like I love traveling, and I love meeting new people, and that like I think the worst thing you can do is just close yourself off to experiences.
Yeah, and just anything. I mean, think of, I have to I can't say there's a lot of people that I would call racist in my circle, or any really, but the idea that you're like, all right, well, if you just want like a purely white society, good luck eating anything that's good luck seeing anything that's beyond a certain thing. Like your world's gonna be pretty small, and it's gonna be pretty sad, so good luck with that. But cool. So were you into comics growing up? Is this something you're always into, or?
So I've always loved, so as you can kind of hit from the and from my background, like I was raised in the 90s, grew up in the 80s. So I was always a big fan. Like I grew up with Transformers, I grew up with He-Man, I grew up with Silverhawk, and the one show that, like, for better or worse, the one that stood out for me was Brave Star.
Really? It's funny because when you were saying that, I was like, I wonder if Brave Star was one you would have watched. But it's really
it was, because like I loved all these shows, I loved all these cartoons. But one thing I realized growing up was like I didn't see any native characters in any of these shows, right? Like all these shows I loved, nobody had like a native character. And then when Brave Star came out, I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. And on top of that, like it was sci-fi, it had everything that I liked. I was like, oh my god, like laser guns, oh my god, spaceships, and the main hero is a Native American. Oh my god, I love it.
That's awesome. I should do a deep dive on that show, because I'm curious as to how that came about, especially during that time period. Like you think someone shopping that idea around to networks, like probably wouldn't have been the most I'm super happy it happened, but just with that system in the 80s, you wonder what, like how that got by, like who I'm glad it got approved, but I find it crazy that some company in like the 80s would have agreed to that, which is great, but I'm curious, because it's like you're right. It's like an indigenous cowboy in space. Like it's covered so many bases, and it's pretty great.
Yeah, and so that's the one that, and I took it for granted, and I was just like, this is awesome, and then everything kind of switched over to Ninja Turtles after that. After Ninja Turtles, everything was all like done.
That did sort of color everything that came after for a very long while.
Yeah, so I wasn't and even then I was still a child, but I mean, like I remember gravitating towards it because I was like, oh my god, that's us, like like this is so cool. And then my love for storytelling, or my love for what I do, came from animation, and then it went over to comic books. I remember like not long after, so Ninja Turtles got me into comics, actually. So I didn't know it was a comic book at first. I thought it was just a cartoon series. Loved it. And then I found I remember it was my mom that bought me my first comic book. So we were on a road trip, stopped at a gas station, and I saw two books. I saw one which was the Ninja Turtles movie adaptation.
Oh, nice. The first one? Classic.
Yeah, the first movie. Yeah.
I had that as well.
And then the other one was Incredible Hulk. So, nice. And I was pushing my luck. I'm not pushing my luck, but I was just like, Mom, can I get this? And I showed her Ninja Turtle one. She's like, yeah, go for it. I was like, oh my God, awesome. And I was like, I wonder if I can get another one. And I was like, can I get this one too? And she's like, yep. And so those were my two first books that I got.
Nice.
And I was in love with that format ever since. So that was in 1990, 1991-ish or whatever. So right. Like, Yeah, so that's when I knew I loved the format, and I got into, and then afterwards I got into the Spider-Man, X-Men. Those were my jams.
Mm-hmm.
And then found Spawn, Image Comic, like, like it was just that progression, right? And
You're the right age that you kind of hit like when each of the big changes happened. It's
yeah,
like you're right there in the 90s when it was like the independent comics like Turtles, well, late 80s, early 90s became mainstream with that series and everything else. And then, when Spider-Man and all those ones kind of were gearing up, and X-Men back again with like these new creative teams. And then, of course, Spawn, when Image came and just shattered all that and started everything. Shoulder pads and shoulder pads,
yeah. Big shoulder pads, big
side
pouches all over the place.
Side pouches everywhere, and blood. I remember reading, like, as a kid, there's a small store down near where I grew up, and they used to have all these like Image comics, and I'd always buy, like, they're like $1 each, and I'd buy a bunch of them. And it was like Blood Strike and Brigade and all these other comics, and they were just like the bloodiest. Like, there's like guts and eyes being ripped out and organs being thrown, and it was such a wake up. I know, everywhere. It was such a wake up call for me as a kid, because like, I was like, Maximum Carnage was probably the bloodiest comic I ever read as a kid. And that wasn't really even that bad. I'm actually reading it again now just because I had a nostalgia desire to check in on that series, which was way too long. You didn't need 14 issues to tell that story. But, and then you go to that and you're like, holy crap, like this is out there. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's where, my love for that medium grew, right? And then you can go back to Maximum Carnage. I remember I bought like the first few issues, and I was like, "This is going like." Once again, I never read the whole thing, but then I got the video game, so that was, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool! It's like the comic," and so that was a cool crossover. I remember that's taking you back really old school.
Oh, it's weird. It's weird reading it again. Like, I got Kindle Unlimited, so and there's a bunch of comics on that. So just on my tablet, I'll throw free ones on. Well, they're not free, but they're part of Kindle Unlimited, and that was one of them. So I've just, like, sometimes I'm trying to fall asleep, I'll just read a couple issues, and yeah, it's wild. It's literally just pages of them ripping people to shreds, and then, like, all of a sudden Deathlock shows up and joins the team, or like Captain America or Iron Fist or like Cloak and Dagger, just weird cameos left and right everywhere. Morbius, like Venom, like Black Cat. Just, I don't, like, it just feels like they just Firestar. They're just picking random people that were kind of popular.
Like, who hasn't been in a book in a while? Let's just drop them in.
It's like, what, Sleepwalker was busy. You couldn't have thrown him in too. Like, it's just, and all these old Spider-Man villains that you hadn't seen in forever, like the Six-Armed Doppelganger, Carrion, Demo Goblin. Like, I don't think Demo Goblin's even been back since the early 2000s. In the late 90s.
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't even like. So, yeah, I fell off the Marvel map in the 2000s.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. I was just like, done.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was more into, like, trying to find. I was more than that period. I was into. I was trying to stay away from superheroes on purpose, and I was trying to find cool stories, like, just like stories. And I think that's where I met the illustrator for the Goon. Oh, and
Eric Powell?
Yeah, I met him.
Yeah, he writes it too.
Yeah,
he writes it and illustrates it.
Yeah, I met him at Chicago Comic-Con.
Oh wow!
And
I'm a huge fan of his.
Yeah, he was peddling his books at the time, and I was just like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then I just started following his stuff. Another one I was into was Hero Bear and the Kid, like, just like looking for, like, books that weren't superheroes, and that's where, that's what I was seeking at the time.
So were you, like, interested in creating them, or are you just purely a fan at this point in your life?
So it was kind of like, not fast forward, but I'm going, some time jumping here.
Yep.
So when in high school, I was a part of a program that introduced us to Photoshop.
Oh,
and
I'm a graphic designer, so I'm very familiar with all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it was a pilot program back in 96, and it was only like 10 students to try this program out, and so it was really cool. And so anyways, I was part of the program. This is when I was like, I love Photoshop. Oh my god, I love doing videos. I love doing all these things. And this was in high school, and that inspired me to, on top of a really great English teacher I had, who just gave me the free reins on a writing assignment. She was phenomenal.
That's so important to the growth of artistic kids, is having a good art teacher or a good English teacher. I had both at different times in my life, and they certainly opened up a whole world of creativity that I feel like could have been closed off if I didn't have somebody that, encouraged that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the thing too, because it was an open assignment. And I even asked her, I was like, so I've got this, going back to like you're talking about like Brigade and all these other like the hyper violence. So I've got this character and I want to, can I do a story? And she's like, yep, go for it. And I was like, and I didn't give her a lot of details. I was like, but it's going to be like pretty violent. She's like, whatever. This is an open assignment. Just do it.
Oh, nice.
So I did it. And she loved it. She even called it out in class. And it's like, she's like, I wanted you guys to write about something that you were interested in, blah, blah, blah. And out of all of you guys, only one of you did it. And I was like, oh my God. And so she called out my story. And
that's what you like in grade school, is to be called out in front of your peers as being
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Might as well just put nerd on your forehead and send you out to the playground.
But I shared the story afterwards because people were wondering like what was the big deal. And then they were reading it like, this is so cool. They wanted to see where it was going to go next.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So we had like it was 4 months. So we had to do one assignment at the end of the month. And so I kept the story going. So that was one thing. So I was like, okay, so there's someone that's encouraging me to write these hyper violent stories and not telling me that I can't do it. I've got this program I've got this class that's showing me how to use Photoshop and encouraging me to draw and all this stuff. I was like, oh my God, like I want to do this. Like, this is what I want to do. So I applied and I found an animation school in Miramichi. So NBC's the college over there. Mm-hmm. So I applied to the school over there, wanted to be an animator, or wanted to do storytelling, or I thought I wanted to be an animator. Then I realized I just wanted to be a storyteller. So we were part of I was in the program, learned how to draw properly, learned all the tips and tricks. And the thing that got to me the most, the ones I was paying attention to, was like storyboarding, character development, and script writing. Those were the ones that actually spoke to me. Mm-hmm. So, and at the time too, I was still oblivious, not semi-oblivious to like cultural identity, and I just wanted to do something cool, right? And didn't want to do anything. And I guess the one thing about that time too is like, it wasn't cool to highlight who you were. Like it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm Mi'kmaq and I'm from Listuguj. And back then you didn't really do that. You're just like, yeah, I'm Brandon and I like to draw. That's it. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't trying to do anything that would make me stand out. So I was creating all these like kind of obscure whatever characters, no real identifiers and stuff. And it was only after I graduated I was offered a job to teach back in my community. So one of the things I was also raised with was, yes, go out to school, but bring back what you've learned. So I was 20. I graduated, like I got the job like 3 months before I graduated.
Wow.
So yeah,
you don't see a lot of that nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. Like I went from a ceremony, and then they're just like, "Okay, you're working the next day." I was like, "Wow." And it was
the world is easy. Like, what are people complaining? Jobs fall out of the sky, apparently.
Yeah, like what are you guys complaining about? Jobs? Like, I got one. Like, actually, there was a struggle because a bunch of my friends, we had our portfolios, and we had this big idea of like, we're going to go to Montreal and start like dropping our portfolios off in studios and stuff, and see what happens, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do that, and like, I'm joining you guys. And then I get this offer, and I was like, I don't know if I'm joining you guys. Like, I want to join you guys. And they're looking at me like, they're like, why? Like, you got a job. Like, we're looking for work. You got work. And I was like, oh yeah, okay.
But it's not as fulfilling as it could be. It's funny. Yeah.
So when I ended up teaching, I was teaching art instruction and computers. Computers are simple. Like, if you could turn it on back then, you got a job. Like, you're qualified. But one thing that I noticed was, so they hired me as a visual art instructor, and the kids they loved that I can draw. And there was one class I was running out. I'm not running out of things to do. I was like, I want to try and find. I'll do a story about one of our legends. I go to the library, nothing, no books, nothing. And I was like, why? Like, why don't we have any of our stuff Like why is like we have all these other stories, but no stories for us. So I'm thinking back to like Brave Star, right? So I did find one book, and it was a small rinky-dink book, and I read the
back of the
story.
library.
Yeah, like it was like how lucky I found it, right? It was such a small second, and so I tell them the story, and it was an exercise that we got in school, in college, which was like, you've got like the 3/4 of the story, and it's up to you to fill it out or finish. Like, how would you end the story? So I give them the assignment, and the kids are all into it and whatever. And then one of them stops halfway through, and they're like, "Well, how would you do the story?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. Let me get back to you on that." So they challenged me to do something. And I thought, that their kids are going to forget about it or whatever. But the idea kind of stuck, and I started like doodling and sketching out some ideas for what I would do. And then and I thought because I only had this one, I only had a class like once a week or whatever. And I thought, a week's gone by, they'll forget about it. But same class comes in, and it's like, so what'd you do? So what'd you come up with? And I was like, oh, you like for real? You guys remember that? Okay. So I was like, here's what I'm playing with. Like I pulled out my sketchbook and I pulled out and they're like, oh, this is so cool. And so that's where the idea for doing Sacred Circles came from. It came from, I was inspired by my students and just being like, I'm glad I went home and I'm glad I did this. Like I took this job and because that's what launched my comic book career. It was, and that was bittersweet too, because I had to make it like, I tried to raise money to get this off the ground, and it wasn't easy because like going back to what you were just saying, like who approved Brave Star? Nobody. And like 23 years ago was like comic books. That's for kids. So I couldn't go to Canada Council for the Arts. I couldn't go to like any types of grants. No, because they're just like, we don't like, it just didn't hit that recognition level
before they realized it could be a good tool for teaching children. It's a massively great tool for that. And even in just my little experience, like I used to help at a comic store years ago, and I still have the occasional parent that'll tell me that like I helped their kid get into reading because I suggested a comic or something for them. So stuff like that, it's amazing. You're like, cool, like that's very cool, and just shows how powerful they can be if people take them, for what they are, or use them for that. Yeah.
For using, exactly. And they're just tools. They're story. Like it's about story. It's about reading. Like it's visual literacy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like it's the ultimate.
That's a great way to put it. Actually, I like that.
Yeah. So anyway, so I tried to find avenues to get this idea off the ground. It took me about 2 years to raise the money. I finally got someone to say yes, and help me get the book off the ground. It was the federal government. Actually, I had to treat it not as an artistic endeavor, but a business venture. So that's where I also started Birch Bark Comics. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a publisher, and my first published book is going to be self-published, like by me.
How convenient.
How convenient. Yeah, I'm going to be a publisher that publishes my own stories. So didn't really, I don't know. I knew nothing of the business world of things. I just knew that I wanted to tell stories. So it was a lot of like building the tracks as the train's moving forward. It was highly stressful, but very rewarding.
It's so funny because like people, like artistic people aren't generally like super inclined to want to like be business, learn all this stuff about business and all this like, structured stuff that you need to do. But like the system is structured in such a way that to get anywhere, you sort of have to, because you have to do that to get yourself out there to finally get to a level of success, and someone else can take over for you and do that. But like, exactly. Exactly.
It's the ultimate oxymorons. Like,
it really is.
The chicken or the, like, so it was just like, and you got to be the, jack of all trades, master of none. So it was really like, trial by fire, I did what I could with the knowledge that I had, or but once again, it's also about timing, right? Like I had this vision, I wanted to do it, and nobody knew what to do with it. Like, but the kids that the people that gave my story a chance loved it. Like and it was a lot of more self-promotion. It was a lot of like, going to powwows, selling the story, getting the recognition. And the other thing too I didn't know was distributors. Distributors will take a heavy cut from like Diamond distributor, like took a massive like destroyed my budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that. Are they still the number one? Like, is there? I thought there was
I
something.
think they're still they are the only ones like when it comes to like comic book shops.
Yeah.
But then like whoever distributes for now the level I don't pay attention to any of that stuff anymore. I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
I just don't have to worry about it, right? So
I thought DC or one of the others got away from them and started doing their own thing, or got involved with somebody else.
I think DC recently is doing their own thing. Yeah. But I think they are still the only ones that are distributing to comic book shops.
Wow.
On top, unless you go the DC route doing it themselves, right?
Yeah.
Which is still another level of headache. Like it's just one of those. I'm glad I experienced it. I just wish I knew more about it beforehand.
Well, that's a shame, especially with something like your product. Like I don't know what the market. I imagine it's a lot broader now as far as like indigenous stories that are available by indigenous creators out there. But I feel like at that point in time in the comic book industry, there probably wasn't a ton of stuff out there. So the fact that you hit a huge stumbling block with distribution when would have behooved everyone to have access to this sort of thing would have is sad and all too familiar story. You hear about a lot with even just regular comic creators have to deal with that system.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's just one of those like I was already operating with one arm tied behind my back, but I just kept on going, right? So I didn't let it stop me. On top of all of this too, I was raising a family. Like we just started a new family, and it's just like, nope, I'm Superman. I can do it all. Nothing is going to stop this train.
That's a great attitude.
But like my wife at the she's still my wife, but back then she was just like, you got to do it, like you got to try, like we got to do, like you don't know until you try. So she was a really big supporter and still has been a big supporter on all my zany ideas. I'm like, I think I want to do animation. Okay, awesome.
Well, that's also a very helpful part of the creative process, having a supportive partner in that way, because if someone expects, well, how did your parents feel about going into animation and stuff? Are they cool with it?
At first they wanted me to go to university or find something that was more
stable,
stable or whatever, right? But I think it was around the time, I think it was like when Toy Story came out, or it was a big story. I remember when they were talking about or Lion King, whatever was making big money. They're like, and you used to like drawing, right? So yeah, maybe there's something to this, right? So
it's funny that
came around.
People usually go there with parents. Yeah, as long as they see you can make money. They either shut up when you start making money, or like animation's slightly better because there is a big career in it. Although you hear lots of stories now about all these animators that aren't getting paid, getting paid peanuts for like Spider-Verse or whatever, like all those people working on those things, and like how little they are actually getting for the amount of work that goes into them. But at that time period, parents would see like, oh well, the anime movies are doing well, you can do that, so go do that.
Oh yeah, you're okay. Put your drawings to work, and so
that's right.
They were always they were very encouraging for college, and they were really supportive, and they were also supportive too. With they actually helped get the business off the ground.
Oh, awesome!
They were one of the first investors, and they helped get it off the ground. And to keep on encouraging me, right? Like you can do this, and whatever support you need, we're going to back you up on it. So on top of having their support, my wife's support. Those were big things to help give me the momentum to keep going with this.
Awesome.
So it was really important. And but yeah, like I said, the business side of things, creative people are creative people.
Yeah.
It's good to know some of the business side of things that you're not taking advantage of, but it's one of those things you can't be, it's not a 50-50 split. You can't, something's going to give, right?
Yeah.
And the more I was trying to be the creative, the business side would falter. Focus on the business side, the creative would falter. And I was just something gave, and it was just I took it as far as I can go. And this is another thing too. I got 3 issues out on my own. I mean, with the help of my friends at the time, I got this idea. You guys want to be a part of it? Yeah, let's do this. So we did it. We took it as far as we could at the time. Learned to it's not failure, it's learning.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot.
Yeah. It's a nice way to color it.
Yeah. But the other thing too is so fast forward a little bit when I do drawing workshops with kids, or any type of like speaking thing with kids or whatever, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is so amazing!" I try to remind them that even when I'm doing the drawing workshops, I'm not trying to turn 20 kids into artists. Like, because I'll go in the classroom, right, and you're not going to get like they'll be excited, but I'm not trying to convert them all.
Yes.
I just want to show them that I'm doing something I love. Like, I love going in the classroom. I love sharing knowledge. I love drawing with them and hearing what ideas that they've got. And I just tell them, it's like, you know what? Like, I'm doing something that I love. Do what you love. Like, if you like whatever sport you like, do that. Whatever you're passionate about. If you like taking photography or photos or whatever, TikToks or whatever, right? Like, whatever you're passionate about, do it. Focus on it. Like, take a chance on yourself. I bet on myself, and look what I'm doing. I'm getting paid to draw with you guys. Like, this is amazing. I'm getting, like, I got invited to be here doing what I love to do. So, and when I share it like that, I can see kids are like, he's doing what he loves. Like, there's a big difference doing something that you have to do than doing something that you want to do.
Absolutely.
And if you demonstrate that with kids and show them what's possible, that's what I like to do.
That's nice.
So yeah, and because I took a chance on myself, I got picked up by Sean Meir, who operates Healthy Aboriginal Studios, or Healthy Aboriginal Comics out in BC, which is now Indigenous Story Studios, and asked me if I wanted to be part of a writing assignment, and I was like, yeah, sure, I've got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
But he helped keep that creative. Like, when I at my lowest point, when I thought I was done with everything, he kept the creativity going. He was just like, okay, like, here, do this. And I was like, but I don't want to. Like, you're doing it, okay? So he kept those those writing projects alive for me, and that's where, like, Tara and I actually went to school together. But that's like that through Sean, that's how we ended up working together.
Oh,
so
really? Awesome.
Yeah. So the first book that we did was River Run, and it was a story on traditional tobacco use and smoking cessation. And I reached out to her and I was like, "Are you doing anything? I know it's been a while, but are you doing anything?" And it's like, "I got this project and I need an artist." And she was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And that was the beginning of our working, like, like, just collaborating and working together. And we ended up doing a bunch of stories for Sean. And I had fun doing them. Like, I was just like, I had no illusions of like, okay, this is just, it's fun. As long as I'm having fun, that's all. At the end of the day, for me, that's all that matters. If I can keep the lights on, great. As long as I'm having fun doing it, great. Because this industry is like.
Oh, sir, go ahead. Finish that thought.
Oh no, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And like, so to give more context, so my oldest son is going to be 20 in January, and my youngest is just turned 17. So I've been, my priority has always been making sure that my family's okay,
of course,
and I can provide for them, right? This is not an industry where you can, like, if you're trying to do those things, you cannot put all your eggs in that basket. So this has been more of like like side gigs. Whenever a good project comes along, I'm going to focus on it, and I still do like a 9 to 5-er, and keep the lights on. Yeah, but it lets me but it allows me to keep on doing the fun things I like to do, right? So
nice. Well, you mentioned early on that you, like, when you were starting, it wasn't a thing to identify yourself as being different, and also, like, to tell stories that fit within your particular experience. So now that you've kind of gone the other side of that and really embrace that and specifically do those sort of stories, like, do you have a desire to go and do something a little more mainstream? Or are you very happy just being within the world of fulfilling Indigenous stories?
So Sean, through Sean, we're writing assignments, and then I got picked up. I got asked by High Water Press to be part of another writing. So everything that I looked at was always like writing like a gig, right? Okay. So everything was a gig, and so I ended up. They asked me if I wanted to be part of this place. So the anthology series, right? Yeah. So they told me what it was all about, and I was like, I actually have an idea. And I want to do something about back home, and I want to, like, this is what I want to do. And they're like, "Hey, great, awesome, done." So I wrote about the salmon raids that took place in our community, and I wanted to do something different with that. I wanted it to be a story told from the perspective of people from the community, because the documentary that was out was more like the aftermath of the raids. I wanted to do something that was leading up to the raids, so kind of like I wanted my story to be like a prelude to the documentary. And then but I was just like, okay, so that was the idea. I tell my wife about it. I was like, okay, I got this project. This is going to be a cool project. And she was just like, okay, you should talk to my mom. So I talked to my mother-in-law, and because she was there during the raids. And so I got a story from her, and I learned more about them just by talking to her. So I was like, this is like, how come we don't know about this? So I incorporated her, what she experienced into this story. And the cool thing about that was afterwards, I was like, this is once again, it's transfer of knowledge. Like, it's our oral history. This is what I look at. I look at graphic novels as the perfect form, graphic novels and animation as perfect forms of capturing our oral history. Because what we like, just the way that they describe and how they tell a story, it leads in so well to graphic novels or animation. So that's how I approached my portion of the book. Book comes out. It was great, or it is great. Like, it's in the German market now, and it's it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I got my editor was just like, awesome, great. We want to do another story with you. I said, okay, great. What do you guys want? And they're like, what do you got? I was like, what do you mean? Like,
I'm used to being told what to do.
Yeah. And they're just like, well, what do you got? I was like, I no one's ever in the last 20, like, I've only ever done work for other people. I've never, like, this is new territory. And but I said, I do actually have a story that I want to tell. And it was kind of like picking up where I left off with Sacred Circles. So I had a chance, and I gave them the pitch for my story, and they're just like, we love it. So that's how I was able to do Eugene's Gift. And so, and it was a great opportunity to flex my creativity again. And everything's just been kind of like lining up to this point where I'm able, like, so I'm doing more personal projects or things that I'm interested in now, and not so much working for other people like doing their work. So that's what I like. So I'm kind of at the point where I'm doing what I want to do. So it's great.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. That's cool. I'm really happy to see more and more, in comics, especially, like, people I've talked to in the show and other things, telling all these different stories, ones unique to their own perspective, and using comics as a medium to do that. Anytime I see anything that's, that proper respect is paid to the source material, or at least to the story they're telling, it always makes me really happy. And, especially in Canada, we have a complicated relationship with our indigenous people. Like most countries do, but in recent years, it's nice to see happy, cool stories, and not just focusing on horrible, tragic stuff, but also telling your own myths, your own legends, and having fun with that, or just stories from your own perspective, which is awesome. So,
well, and that's the other thing that I noticed too was, like, there was I would say the last 10 years, it was a lot of trauma-based stories.
Oh yeah.
And
right around the time Gord Downey put out the Secret Path stuff with that stuff came out, it was like all the residential school stuff. And I mean, I guess that's because it's becoming as a public, we're all learning a lot of stuff that I guess was available before, but it's come to the light now. So
right,
people are sort of jumping on
they're important stories. I'm glad they came out. But then there was like this shift of like we want more. Like, it seems like we were defined by our trauma. And if the story wasn't sad enough, it wasn't going to get published.
That's very true. I'm glad to hear someone from within that industry say that, because there's so much of it that you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, there's more to us than our trauma. There's more to us than these tragic stories, right? And that's what I've always it goes back to what I've been trying to do with Sacred Circles. Like, even I want to try and tell fun adventure stories.
Awesome.
And I want to inspire kids to expand their creativity.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
awesome.
wait a second. I think. Oh, yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So my sister-in-law's here, and my niece and nephew are.
Are they there as well? Oh, hi. Hello.
Yeah, there's one. Yeah, that's my nephew Gage.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Nope.
Right on. Cool. Yeah, no, that's very cool. It's kind of funny because like that's sort of something I did want to discuss, but I'm glad you brought it up in a way that it was like it's like if you were like like a Black American and all the only stories you could tell were based around slavery. Like it's like there's so much broader than that. It's like I'm glad to see that, I love that phrase that we're bigger than our traumas, right? So that's really cool. That's awesome. And the fact that you're doing all these wonderful stories that are embracing creativity and also encouraging other kids to embrace theirs, which is also really cool. So even just I mean, it's funny, like how do you feel when you see stories that are are done by non-indigenous creators about indigenous life? Specifically, I read I was a big fan of the comic Scalp. Did you ever read that by Jason Aaron? Yeah. And then in recent years, people have brought it up as being problematic somewhat because I don't believe he's indigenous creator. But as far as a crime story goes, it was a very interesting and good thing, in my opinion. But it's like I often wonder how people within those worlds feel about that sort of creative output.
Well, it's one of those things where it's a complicated relationship because once again, like back in that time, which was 20 years ago, nobody was doing I was on one hand I was like, cool, great, another indigenous story is coming out, but then at the same time I was just like, who wrote it, right?
Yeah. And I always thought he was, and that's why I was growing up, and then eventually I read something that was saying how he wasn't. I was like, oh, I really thought he was. So there's that level of it too. But yeah, that's what I mean. It just makes you wonder. I watched this movie. I'm a big fan of this director, Scott Cooper. He did a movie called Antlers that came out a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it.
It's very good. It's very good. If you like his movies, but I was watching it deals around the Wendigo myth, which is something that has popped up in other movies that I've seen, and video games even and stuff like that too, which is cool. Even in Marvel Comics, has a character called the Wendigo and stuff. So, but they show segments on the Blu-ray speaking with indigenous people they had on hand to be the experts on the mythology to make sure everything fit and worked within the framework of what they actually believe. And to me, I had a great respect for that. I thought it was really cool because you could just say, well, this is a monster and it comes when somebody eats somebody else and that's it. But when they actually paid enough attention and cared enough to reach out to people from those societies that say, hey, this is really what we believe and where that comes from. I thought it was pretty cool. Plus you have Graham Greene in it explaining the thing, which is every time I see him in a movie, I'm super happy.
Oh yeah, anytime Graham Greene's in anything, I'm just like, oh my god, this is awesome. This is great.
When I was growing up, I only had CBC and ATV, so North of 60 was something I watched a lot. So anytime I see anybody from that pop up in something, I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. So there's a great movie he was in a few years ago called Wind River. Which I really, really loved, which is very cool as well. So featured kind of around the community as well.
I mean, so when it comes to that, it's I don't want to say I want to give them a pass, but it's just a story was being told, right? So, and nobody it was so hard, and it still is hard for us to break into the industry and tell our stories. And I think you couldn't have that if it wasn't for that. Then we wouldn't be it wouldn't inspire someone to call them out or tell to the narrative back to in our favor, right? So
fair enough, and also may open the door for more interest in those sort of stories, or at least stories based around those experiences and perhaps ones by the actual people involved in those communities. But yeah, I know it's a real complicated issue when I'm always kind of curious to what other people think about it as well.
I don't think that there's an excuse for it now. I think the capacity is there, and I think it always goes back to capacity. Was the capacity there, or was the talent there? and it probably was like, I was floating around, but I wasn't like waving my flag saying like, like I'm an indigenous writer,
Yeah.
or indigenous creator, right? I was happy just doing my own thing, but I think now it's the capacity is there, the talent is there, so these spaces should be open for us to tell the type of stories that we want to tell, and let the other ones just like they should be at an editor role then, as opposed to like the writing role type of thing. That's how I look at it. So
yeah, no, that's good way to look at it. Cool. So what's next? What's down the pipeline for you?
So it's on pipeline. So I've been doing a series of animated shorts for the Nigwe Collective. Hoping to get some more done in the winter. I'm just finishing up, or I just finished up some edits on volume 2 of my Bugla Mooch, My Little People Adventure. This is a process though, so hopefully the book's going to be out, or the book is scheduled to come out October 2025.
Nice. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's a process.
yeah. Well, that's publishing, right? It's not, people think it's like you ship it off and it's, it goes off to whatever person and then it gets pumped out like a month later. But no, there's so many hands and places got to go through. Yeah.
But I love the process. I love, like I love everything about what we're doing. That's the big thing I got on my plate. I got a couple of other small little side projects, like, just helping others out with their stories, and then seeing what else, like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
That's fantastic. Cool. And obviously, you still doing any work with Tara coming up? Or Tara was on the show a few episodes ago. So
we're not doing anything together yet, but I want to. Like, there's an idea that I'm floating around, and I think this is one of the things. Like, we've been so successful in our things that we're like, and we talk all the time, but it's like now I get it when people say like, let's try and collaborate. Like, yeah, let's try. Like, how hard it is to do something now, we're both busy doing our own things now, so it's just like we're just like, when can we do something together again? And we both said it to each other and just like, I don't know.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I won't take any more of your time. I'm super happy to have you on the show, and I really appreciate you coming on, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. And like, I'm so grateful for Tara to toss my name. And it's so funny because I got Tara into graphic novels or comic books. And she got me into animation, so it's just been like full circle. So I love
her new project. Sounds super cool. I'm very excited for it when it comes to the animated project she's working on that should be discussed when she was on. That sounds so awesome. I'm super pumped for that.
I'm so pumped. Yeah. So it's one of those things where I hope that we can do something together. I have an idea, and I shared it with her, and I think and this one I'm willing to wait. Like, I don't want to rush it. So. Yeah. But I want to do my part, so I'm working on a pitch now for a story, and if I can get it funded, then I know how long it takes to write. I know that she's busy doing her animation stuff, and I want to try and slide it in when one's done, that she can just pick this up.
Awesome. Well, I'm very much looking forward to seeing whatever that's going to be. So.
Awesome.
Well, hopefully I run into you at a con sometime. I do usually go to them to sell art, so that's where I ran into Tara at the East Coast Comic Expo. So hopefully I'll run into you at some point.
Excellent.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'll see you then.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There is my conversation with Brandon Mitchell. Big thanks to have him on the show. Big thanks to you for listening. Big thanks to everybody for whatever you're doing. Just keep doing it. Be awesome. And, Brandon mentions quite a few times that, he loves to go to these talks he does with kids and really try to encourage them to follow their passion, to find something they really want to do and do it. Take a chance on yourself. And I think those are very, very good words that should be remembered, should be repeated. and should be spread as much as you can. So, follow your passion, take a chance on yourself, and keep listening to the Graphic Histories podcast. Got to throw that little plug at the end. Be sure to check out our sister podcast, X-Rated, the X-Men Anime Review Show, in which me and Devin Scalehorn watch all the episodes of the original X-Men animated show from Fox. And we're coming to the end of that pretty soon, once we hit the end of Season 5, which I think is only four episodes away. So once that's done, we're going to probably move on to watching all the X-Men movies and chatting about those. So we're trying to fill some time, but also keep some fun content before the new series comes out on Disney+. So we're looking forward to that. Very much so. And yeah, it's going to be fun too. But go check that out. New episode just dropped in which we did Jubilee's Fairy Tale Theater, which is a fun little episode. And it's a good time. If you like that cartoon, if you like nostalgia podcasts, if you like people chatting about your favorite things, that's a good show. We are part of the United Federation of Podcasts, and they have a bunch of different types of shows like that, including a Trivial Debates one. And Hold Up, the movie podcast, I was a guest on that recently, in which we talk about parallel universe movies. So that was a blast. One of my all-time favorite films is Everything Everywhere All at Once. We do get to chat about that. And it's and as well as Coherence, which is a great little indie parallel universe film. And then another 70s one called Quest for Love, which was an interesting romp. I'm glad I watched it. Probably not super into going to watch it again, but it's there. It's been watched. It's in the canon. It's on Letterboxd, where I am. I house all my reviews. So if you're on Letterboxd, check it out. I believe it's under Uberdre, Uberdre, to find my reviews. Check out social media for our next guest. Working on that, as I always am, never stopping. And yeah, in the meantime, have a great couple weeks. I'll see you back here in a fortnight. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, which means you're wide open.
The Graphic Histories podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.